webinar. All right, we'll get started. First of all, we'd like to welcome you everyone to the Community and Economic Development Small Business Relief Program Grant webinar today. The purpose for this webinar is to review the application for the Small Business Relief Program and to answer any questions that you may have about this application or this program. I would like to introduce the staff that will be assisting me on this webinar today. You may not see them or hear them, but they're in the background, and I would like to thank them for helping us today, and that's Ms. Jeanette Mills. She's the Executive Assistant to the Director for the Community and Economic Development Department. Then we have Jonathan DeMont. He is an IT specialist, and he works in our IT department. Then we have April Mahoney. She is the DCED, or Community and Economic Development Accountant, and she is in the background, and she'll be taking questions from our Facebook Live chat as well today. So we are on Facebook Live, so we thank those that's on Facebook as well. And myself, my name is Barbara Francis, the Economic Development Program Manager. So again, thank you for attending this webinar, and we hope that when you leave, you'll have answers to those questions that may have been lingering. At this point, we'll go to our next slide. The local Albany Small Business Relief Package program, this is how it works. You have eligibility to receive from $2,500 to $10,000 for the City of Albany businesses with annual gross receipts of $500,000 or less and up to 15 employees. The available funds was $350,000 from the CDBG minimum and a matching fund from the City Reserve Funds for a total of $700,000. This will be administered, or these funds will be administered by the Department of Community and Economic Development. And who is eligible? The following type of businesses are eligible for these funds: S Corp, LLC, and sole proprietors. Non-profit business are not eligible. I would like to say something about the LLC. If you are an LLC, you will be asked to have a general operational agreement submitted to us, also, or a partnership agreement. And the purpose of that is to let us know who is authorized to enter into a contract for your business. If you are a sole proprietor, then there is one of the documents that is asked to be submitted is the state of Georgia registration. For sole proprietors, that information is not required because you don't have to do that. So we want to make sure that you understand that little later on in the presentation. You have to be in business within the city limits, be in business for 2 years, and be in the city limits of Albany, Georgia. Also, you must also apply for the CARES Act funding. Next slide, please. Again, the source of these funds are $350,000 from our Community Development Block Grant and $350,000 from the City Reserve Funds. Next slide, please. And how to apply: you will complete an application. The applications we will give you on the next slide, we will show you the website in which you can obtain the application. You would need also, with that application, you'll need the application, your current business license, the Georgia State registration. And again, I stress that if you are a sole proprietor, we will not require you to have a Georgia State registration because it's not required for sole proprietors to register with the state of Georgia. You will need copies of invoices or statements from your creditors to be paid with these funds. You will need proof of payment of property taxes if applicable. And you would also need, if you're going to use these funds for payroll, you would need 3 months of payroll register will be required to be submitted with your application. Again, we will show you these things a little bit further on in the presentation as well. Next slide, please. Here is where you would go, the website that you would go to get your application. And I'll give you a few moments if those of you are following along with the webinar, where if you would like to go to the website and actually pull up the application, we will give you a few moments to do so so that you can follow along with us as we go through the application. And I will read that website out. It is www.albany.gov/business-small-relief-program. And I'll give you a few moments at this time so that you can log on to that particular website. And as you are logging on to the website, one of the things that I want to emphasize is that these funds, the parameter for these funds that we talked about a few minutes ago, from the $2,500 to the $10,000, is for 3 months of expenditures from April, May, and June. That's the only months that applies for this funding. April, May, and June. You cannot go back and reach into your expenditures from March or anything prior to April 1st, 2020. So I want to make sure that you understand that. And again, if you are an LLC, you are required to submit with your application an operating agreement or a partnership agreement. We have to know who is authorized in your business to sign into a contract, because there will be a contract that will have to be signed. And again, if you are sole proprietor, I'm just reviewing a few things that we've already discussed. If you are a sole proprietor, you will not be required to submit a state of Georgia registration. Now, there are some people who are LLCs or S Corp who may not be familiar with that. It is, and I can tell you that you can go on SOSGA.gov, and that is the state of Georgia where businesses would register to indicate that they are operable in the state of Georgia. At this time, we are actually on the Small Business Relief Program application. There was 5 pages, but they go pretty fast. And so we're going to go through this application process at this time. The first page of the application is a checklist to let you know what is needed, what you should have and what you should submit with your application for your application to be complete. If you do not submit these items, your application will be incomplete, and you will receive an email from one of the processors indicating that your application is complete and what you would need to complete your application. You will have 5 days from that date of the email for you to submit that information back to us again for your application to be marked as complete. That is 5 business days that you will have in order to submit those items so that your application can be complete. But one of the things that I want you to remember is that the funds are for first come, first serve. So if it takes you all 5 of those days, then your application is on hold until we get all of those items. It could be other people that those funds could be exhausted by the time you get that information back to us. So we want to get the information back to us fairly quickly, okay? As we go through the checklist, it says you need, of course, the application. That's number 1. Number 2, if you are LLC or an S Corp, you would need your state of Georgia registration. Now, if you are inactive or you have not updated or renewed that state of Georgia registration, you would need to go on and do so before you submit it. It should have on there 2020. Your current business license. Again, this is something that has to be have an expiration date of December 31st, 2020. So you have to have your current business license to be submitted. And again, we talked about the LLC with the operating agreement, or it can be a partnership agreement as well. And please, at any given time, we have a question at the bottom of your screen. You will see where it has Q&A. Before we go any further, if you have any questions during any of the webinar, please type your questions into the Q&A and we will answer them as quickly as possible. Copies of invoices or statements from creditor to be paid with these funds. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You would have to submit statements. For example, if you are going to use these funds to pay your rent or your lease on your facility, you would need a statement saying that you owe for or that you are paying your April or your May or your June lease. Proof of payment of property taxes is applicable. If you have property tax or you own property within the city of Albany, you have to send us documentation showing that those taxes are now current. If you're going to be using the funds for payroll assistance, 3 months of payroll register will be required. And again, you will see here that it does show a statement saying, please submit all required documents with the application for consideration. If all documents are not submitted, again, it talks about that it will remain open for 5 business days. If the documents are not received by the close of business on the 5th day, written notification will be forwarded by email or regular mail that the application have been denied. Now, you can submit a new application within 30 days from that date of denial. However, please remember that funds are limited and on a first come, first served basis. So if you are denied because of an incomplete application and you wait 30 days, within 30 days, those funds could be exhausted and your application will be null and void because there will be no more funds to issue. It is a first come, first served basis. Next, you will see that there is a disclaimer. This small business grant relief program is subject to final approval from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Please understand that the city must wait for such approval before processing your application. Upon receipt of this approval, the city will promptly begin processing your application. We ask you to read that and understand that and then acknowledge that you understand. That is very important. And you put a check in the I acknowledge box. Okay, we're going to go on to the next page, please. We are on page 2 of the application. It says your first name. This is the first name of the owner of the business or the CEO, which is the Chief Executive Officer of the business, your first name and your last name and an email address. Now we ask that it be either your personal email so that we can have direct contact because again, this is the email that we'll be using to contact you. So we want to make sure it's an email that you check every day, or it could be your business email address. So either email address is fine, but one that you will check on a daily basis so that if we are communicating with you about your application or the incompleteness of your application, you will get this email immediately. Then ask for your business name. This is the legal name of your business that's again registered with the state of Georgia as well as registered with the city on your business license. a contact number. This should be a number that we can contact you immediately or as quickly as possible if we have to call you for any reason. You want to give us, whether it's a cell phone, you can always put outside in parentheses after the number that it is a cell phone, or you can put your business line. Then it asks for a tax ID number. This is your tax ID number that you receive from the IRS. If you are a sole proprietor and you don't have a tax ID number, it will be your social security number. And I want to also remind you that this information is confidential, and we do secure it and make sure that it's kept that way. It says business address. It says this business address is the physical address of your business. We have to verify that your business is located within the city limits of Albany, Georgia. So if you have an address, it could be 1202 West Broad Street, and you may be in a strip mall or in a business where there is a suite, or it could be a suite or a room. So that's where address line number 2 would come in. You would put that suite number or that room number or that second portion of your address there. And then it will be the city, which will be Albany, Georgia, the zip code, and of course, what county you are in. And it should be Doherty County. How did you hear about this program? If you would please indicate how you heard about the program, whether you heard about it on WALB, if you heard about it on Facebook, or how did you hear about the program? The next question is, describe the nature of the services or product of that your business offers. And I've seen some applications come in and people have just put a very bland type of answer. Please be specific as you possibly can. This is good information for us to know what kind of businesses are out there in our city. For example, if you are a consulting business, please indicate what type of consulting business. There's a lot of different kind of consulting businesses out there. So if you just put consulting there, that will not really tell us the type of services. Consulting on what level? If you are a domestic violence consultant, or if you are a substance abuse counselor or consultant, if you are an accountant and you do private accounting, public accounting, all that information is good and should be indicated where it says the type of service or the nature of service that you offer from your business. And before we go any further, I see we got a couple of questions. I'm going to see one of the questions that we have, and we'll reiterate this again. It says, where is the application located? It is located on the city website, the City of Albany website, and the actual web address is www.albany. I'll give you a few minutes to write that down. Albany Albany, Georgia.gov/business/small business relief program. And if you scroll, once you arrive at that website, if you scroll to the middle of the page, you will see where it says apply now. Our next question says the application lists country instead of county. I'm sorry. Are we to list Doherty County anyway? No, the country, would be USA. Again, let me read that question. The application lists country instead of county. Are we to list Doherty County anyway? And the answer to that is no, you would list USA. Okay, we'll go to the next page. we are on page 3 of the application, and this is where we've been seeing a lot of different things, and so we want to be very clear about this next portion. It says propose use of grant funds. You will see there's a box there that says use of proceeds. You can click on the arrow, and when you click on the arrow, there's going to be a drop down box, and the drop down will show you various items that you can select from. Some of the things that we have been seeing, it says working capital. They'll just pick one working capital or pick working capital and put amount requested $10,000. Well, you have to be a little bit more specific than that. Working capital could mean a lot of different things. And so that's why we have in there payroll. That is a part of working capital. That's an expense for operating your business. You have in there utilities. If you go back up, Ms. Jeanette, to the drop-down box. Thank you. You see that they have utilities. You can indicate utilities and how that amount will come from these proceeds. You'll see that you have accounts payable, inventory and supplies, and rent and mortgage, and then you see working capital. So we ask you, do not put just working capital and a flat amount of $10,000. You will have to be specific and see and show us how these funds are going to be spent for your business. And then the last one says all others. Be specific. We've been getting just all others and just a dollar amount and no specific. But I know that we're going to go back up a little bit so I can make sure that everyone understands. If you put utilities, Ms. Jeanette, if you'll put utilities there, okay, click on that. And then we're going to put in there 2 months worth of utilities and say it's $1,000. So if you indicate $1,000 for me, you're going to see that as she do that and hit enter, it's going to pop up $1,000 for the total amount requested. But then she's wanting more than that. So she's going to go to the add button right underneath the box where it says use of proceeds, and she's going to hit add. It's going to give her another drop down box, and we're going to go to that arrow and we're going to put in rent and mortgage. And we're going to put $2,500. And as you can see, the total grant amount requested is adding up what the use of your proceeds are going to be. Again, before we go any further, I want to remind you that this can only be for 3 months worth of expenditures: April, May, and June. And so then if you want to add another one, you will add another box by hitting the add button. And you will say working capital this time. And you say $1,500. Because that may be for some minor accounts payable or minor expenditures. For example, it could be used to purchase the PPE equipment that you use. So you can use that for working capital, or you can use all other items, and you will indicate that in the box below, which we'll get to in a moment. But again, I wanted to show you that you just do not put working capital and $10,000. You have to be specific. The next question says, have you received funds from any other sources? And you're going to put yes if you've received the PPE, if you've received funds from the EDIL. If you've received any of those funds, you would put that there. Okay, and it says list the source of those funds and the purpose for which those funds were used. So you would put where it says source, you'll put PPP. And of course, we all know that the PPP is used basically for payroll and utilities and whatever amount you may have received. At this point, it was, if you receive PPP, out of the 100% of the funding, 25% at one time was to be used for utilities. Now they have changed that to 40%. So for example, you receive $10,000 from the PPP for your payroll and utilities. So you will put the amount where the box says $10,000. Now, even though you may have received funds from PPP, this does not disqualify you from receiving these grant funds at all. Only thing that allows us to see is that you have done your due diligence and you seek other funding elsewhere to help you, because we know that the amount that we're offering is maybe a small amount and your business may need other funding sources in order to continue to stay afloat or to reopen your business. So we want to see that you have exhausted, or we may even have some referrals that we may can offer to you to help you in this instance. So we want to make sure that our small businesses are staying afloat and that you're continuing to operate, because we realize that small business matters. It also says, please explain the reason for your past due financial obligations. This is where you would put in your statement of why you are past due. And we've seen some indications. We have seen some indication of just past due. Please be specific and give a detailed reasoning for your past due obligations. You can't just say due to Corona 19. What about Corona 2019? Was your business closed during this pandemic? Did you have to lay off staff? What happened? What caused you to be delinquent? Not just say Corona 2019. That's not enough explanation. We need you to be detailed on your explanation. It is critical that you do that. Please give us a full explanation. My business was closed due to Corona-19 starting in March, such and such date, because of, and then give your reasoning. Or I didn't close my business, but because of Corona 2019, we could not service, because we are a restaurant, we could not service our patrons. We had delivery still going, but that took away from our business revenues coming in, so it threw us behind in our financial obligations. Those are the kind of detailed information that we would need, where it says, please explain the reason for your past due obligations. Again, please be detailed. The next question says, what measures have your business taken to minimize transmission of the coronavirus to you, to your employees, and to your customers? You need to, again, be detailed. What measures have you taken in minimizing transmission of the coronavirus to your staff, your employees, and your customers? If you are a restaurant, for example, all staff are now required to wear masks, you're taking temperatures, you have rearranged your business so that you are practicing social distancing. You're taking the temperature of your customers as they come in. You are having all of your servers wear gloves, as well as their mask. You're indicating that a mask is required to come in. I know that can be difficult for a restaurant, but you're only servicing people on the outside, whatever it may be. I'm just using this for an example. So again, we need you to be detailed about this, because it is very important that we make sure that you, your employees, and your customers are safe. That's a primary responsibility of a business owner. So we want to make sure that you're doing all that you're going to do. And if you're going to be purchasing some PPE equipment to help minimize the transmission, you can indicate that in here as well, that with these funds I'm going to be purchasing this, that, and the other to help to minimize the transmission of the coronavirus. Next question, it says, are you current on your business taxes? This means your federal, your state, and your local taxes. If you're a business, you pay local taxes, sales tax. If you have payroll, you have federal taxes, you have state taxes. Again, please make sure that you are current on all of these taxes, and check the box that's appropriate for that answer. Business debt. It says, furnish the following information for all business debt, indicating by an asterisk if these items are to be paid with the grant proceeds. And those particular ones, you will present a copy of an invoice or statement that reflects the outstanding balance. So you would check paid by grant, you would check that, and you would say to Barb's VIP Services. Just a name I made up, and you indicate how much you're going to be paying based on, because that was your April invoice. Okay, she's putting P&P Services, and we're going to pay them $500 will be paid with these grant funds. Your monthly payment is only $100 or $150. But because of this, you've had to incur more expenses from this company because you bought more supplies. You couldn't get rid of the supplies. So because you was closed down. So all this is important. These are the expenses that you're going to be using to pay from this grant proceeds. However, you can also list all of your additional debts as well. You just will not check the box to be paid by this grant. And to add a next one, you would just click on the word add, and you will continue in the same manner. I'm giving you a few moments if you are following along with us to complete that, if you have others. We're going to go to the next page. I see we do not have any questions at this point for this page. Okay, we are on page 5. And it says management. This will be where you will put each of your partners, your officers, directors, any stockholders, any proprietors that have ownership must be shown here. So you will put their first name, their last name, and a percentage of the portion of the company that is owned. If they only own 50% of the company, you will put 50 there and a percentage. Now this must equal to 100. So if you put 50 there, then you will have to tab down and add another space for another individual that has the other 50%. And where it says mailing address, yes, that should be their mailing address. If their mailing address is the business, then it will be the business address if that is their mailing address. But now it could be also a P.O. box. Their mailing address could be a P.O. box, and it could be their home address. So we'll give you a few minutes to type that in. It could be, like I said, it could be a P.O. box. And you add a second person, which could be could be Sally Doe. And as you can see, the total ownership percentage equals up to 100. That has to be 100 in order for you to not go further. If you don't if it doesn't equal up to 100, it will highlight that, and you will have to go back and make sure that you put the correct percentage in or add another individual that will equal up to your 100% ownership. Now, the next couple of places on the application is optional, but we ask that you do complete these items because it is for our statistical purposes. We like to know who we're helping to make sure that we are servicing all of the city of Albany, Georgia. Business owner. Is it male, female, or both? And it could be both because it could be a partnership. And so that means you have two. You have a male and a female. So you would click the both button. Veteran service status. It could be a veteran, it could be a veteran era, or a disabled vet. The next one says, shh. The next one says race. And there are various selections, and you will select the one that applies to you or your partnership or your partners. Now, at this area, it only has space for, so if the first person in the organization, you can put that person information here, even though it may be 2 or 3, but you don't have space for 2 or 3, so you can put one, the first person, primary person in the partnership or the LLC. So we'll give you time to complete that. And then I will look to see if we have any questions, which we do not. And at this time, I will ask April, do we have any questions from Facebook? Okay, she's indicated no questions from Facebook. So we'll go on to the next page. Those are excellent questions. If you go back to the application, we were on page 5. And I was informed that you didn't hear the answers to the last questions. It says, yes, once you apply, how to receive your payment. And we will answer that question a little bit later on in the presentation. And the next question was, how long does it take for your application to be processed? Again, we will answer both of those questions a little bit later in the webinar. Thank you. Those were excellent questions. We're on page 5 of the application. It says, how many employees did you have on staff prior to the business closing due to the corona? You will put the number of employees that you have there. It could have been 1, which is yourself. It could have been 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 15. And how many employees will you retain should you receive funding? This is very important because one of the things that the Community and Economic Development Department is about is job retention and job creation. So in this instance, it will be job retention. So it is very vital that we have a number in there indicating how many employees will you retain should you receive this funding. That is vital information. The next part of the application is where you would upload the required documents that we talked about at the very beginning of the presentation. That's on your checklist, which is on page 1. Your Georgia State registration. Again, if you are a sole proprietor, you will not have a Georgia State registration to upload. If you are not a sole proprietor and you are a S Corp or a LLC, you would be required to upload your Georgia State registration, as well as it has to be current. Your business license, you upload it there, and it also will have to be current. All sole proprietors, all LLC, all S Corp should have a business license with the City of Albany, and the expiration date for a current business license is December 31st, 2020. The next one says operating agreement for LLCs only. If you are sole proprietor, you will not have an operating agreement, but if you are LLC, you will have an operating agreement or a partnership agreement. This information will tell us who is authorized to sign a contractual agreement that you must enter into at the onset of, at the end of this, before funds are distributed. Excuse me. The next one says invoices. The invoices for the funds that you're going to be, for the funds that you're going to be using would need to be uploaded there. It could be invoice or it could be a statement from your creditors. The next one says property taxes, proof of payment of property taxes if applicable. So if this is not applicable, you will not upload anything. But if it is, you will include a copy of your property taxes and some form of payment receipt. You should have a receipt showing that those taxes have been paid, whether it's a canceled check or a receipt from the property tax office. If these funds are going to be used for payroll assistance, you will need 3 months of payroll register will be required, and that's where it says payroll register. You will upload that information there. Okay. The next one says applicant signature. We have gotten some applications where you did not sign. You will click where it says sign, and it will take you to a box where you actually type in your name and it will sign it So as you can see, she's going to type in my name, and it will sign it, and you will click where it says sign, and it will pop into the signature box on your application. Now, will you see date, time capture on form submission? You would not put a date there. This date will automatically populate, so that this is where it is actually date stamped. When you hit the submit button, it will actually date stamp your application. And this is how we'll know what application came in first. It will be by the date and the time. So if we got several applications in the same day, it would date stamp it, and whichever one came in first would be the one that comes in first. Now, if you recognize or if you realize that you need some more documentation to be uploaded, you can, instead of hitting the submit button, you can hit the save as draft button and come back to your application a little bit later so that you can get the required documents to upload, so that when you submit your application, all the required documents are attached. So you would save it as a draft instead of hitting submit button, because again, you want to have your application complete with all the necessary and required documents before you submit your application, because only thing that will do is to delay your application from being processed because you have submitted an incomplete application. So as she hits submit, there's going to be a few other things that we're going to tell you about. After you hit the submit button, you will receive an email from, it says DocuSign. That DocuSign is for a W-9 that will come to you for you to complete and sign, and hit the complete button, and that will come to us as well. Again, after you hit the submit button on your application, on page 5, you'll receive an email, and it's from DocuSign. This is for you to complete the W-9. What I have seen in some of the applications that we have received is that you forget to sign the application, the W-9. You have not put your either Social Security or your EIN number on, or your federal ID, tax ID number, EIN number, in the space provided on the W-9. Again, if that information is not in there, we will have to send that W-9 back to you again. I understand today that some of you have been receiving a duplication for a W-9. If you're not sure if you completed that W-9 correctly the first time, then I encourage you to go ahead and submit it a second time. We will weed out that we got it twice. But if you are sure that you completed it properly, and you signed it and all the information is there, then you can go ahead and delete that second email from DocuSign. We did realize we have a little glitch in the system, and we are working on getting that cleared up for you. Again, if you did receive a DocuSign for the second time, if you are sure that you completed all the necessary information on that W-9 the first time, you can go ahead and delete that second email. Once you have completed your W-9 and it is submitted to us, you will get a second email from us, and it will say, "Thank you for your application. The Department of Community and Economic Development has received your application. Our processing team will begin reviewing your application, and we will keep you notified of the status of your application." So to answer one of the questions that came in earlier about the application process, you asked a question, and the question was, how long does it take for your application to be processed? We are processing them as quickly as possible. As they come in, we are processing the applications. So we would say anywhere from 5 to 7 business days at this point in time. So about approximately 2 weeks. Now, some may get it a little bit sooner. It depends on your application. If your application is complete, your W-9 is complete, we can verify certain things on your application, such as your taxes, such as your property taxes has been paid. We can verify all of those informations and that you are in the city limits of Albany, Georgia, then your application will probably go very smoothly and it can be processed in a shorter amount of time. But we are saying at this point in time, approximately 2 weeks for processing. So that will answer that question. At this time, I don't see that we have any questions coming in from our webinar, nor do I see any questions coming in from Facebook. Your business matters. Small business are the heart of our community. A virus can hurt the body, but a strong heart will keep the life body blood flowing. So again, we realize that small businesses are a vital part of our community, and we're here to serve those small businesses. I see that we have a question come in, and we'll do that. Do we send, the question is, do we send in tax forms? I'm not sure what tax forms you're referring to, because we're not asking for any tax information such as your 2018 tax returns. We're not asking for that at all. We're just asking for the items that's on your checklist. The only tax form that we're asking for is the W-9. And that person asked a question, W-2. No, we're not asking for a W-2. The only tax form we're asking you for to complete is the W-9. Yes, the W-9 is the form that you would submit. Once you completed your application, you will get an email saying from DocuSign to complete your W-9. Once you complete that W-9, it will submit itself back to us when you hit the complete button on DocuSign. Thank you for that question. Again, a good question. I see we have a couple of other questions that's come in, and those are those questions. So please, if you have any questions, this is the time to ask your question so that we can ensure that you have a full understanding of how to complete the application so that it will not delay your application from getting processed. We want to process them as quickly as possible so that we can get the funds to you. And another question was, how long does it take to receive the proceeds? Once your application has been approved, you will get an email indicating that your application has been approved, and you will get a form that's for you to complete. And there are 2 forms that we will send out for you to complete. One form will be called the Duplication of Benefits, and I want to take this opportunity to explain that quickly. The duplication of benefits, for example, if you receive the PPP for your payroll from March to May, you cannot use these grant funds for the same period of time for that payroll. Again, let me repeat that because I think some people have gotten this a little bit confused. If you receive the PPP for your payroll and you're using it for your payroll from March through May, you cannot apply for this grant to use these funds for payroll for that same period of time, because that is a duplication of benefits. You're using these funds for that same payroll that you got the PPP for. Please, you will sign an affidavit indicating that you're not partaking in a duplication of benefits. So we will, once your application has been approved, we will send you an email with that particular document that you will have to sign and submit it back to us, and a sales agreement will come to you, not a sales agreement, a contractor agreement indicating that you realize that you're receiving these funds, how much you've been approved for, and what is your responsibility, because you will have 45 to 60 days in order to return to us the invoice or the receipts from which these funds were utilized and you paid those obligations. Let me repeat that again. Once your application has been approved, you will receive a form for duplication of benefits, and you will receive a contractor agreement form. It'll be your responsibility to sign those both forms and send them back to us before we can process your check to be sent to you. Once that check is sent to you, at that time, it will be your responsibility to send back to us receipts showing what that those funds were. For example, you paid your rent. You will send us a receipt back showing payment of rent for that period of time. So if your rent was due for the month of June, which at this point we know you will be late, you will send us a receipt back showing that what was on your application, you indicated that you was going to pay your rent for the month of May and June. So you will send us a receipt back showing that you paid your rent for the month of May and June. And I hope everybody got that. I don't see any questions coming in, but you will have 45 to 60 days in order to return that information to us. It is imperative that you understand that you do have to report that information back to us in a receipt manner. If you paid your utility bill with it, then you will send us a receipt from the City of Albany Utilities showing that you paid for utilities for the month of May and June, or your June utilities. Please remember that these funds can only be used for April, May, and June. If you purchased PPE equipment, you will have a receipt from that company because that's what you indicated on your application you were going to use these funds for. Then you will send us a receipt from that company indicating you purchased these PPE equipment. Again, these receipts are due back to us, and it will indicate that on the information that you'll receive once your application has been approved. Nothing that I'm saying will not be indicated to you. Again, you'll receive 2 forms of documents that you must complete and send it back to us. So if it takes you 2 weeks to send the documents back to us, once you get approved, then the question was how long before you receive your funds. Then you will not receive your funds until we receive these 2 documents back. Those documents will tell you, one will be a duplication of benefits and the other will be a contractual agreement that will tell you you've been approved and for how much money you've been approved for. Now, because you asked for $10,000, once we go through your application and verify all of your information, you may not receive $10,000. We want to be very clear about that. The application is for, or the funds are for, from $2,500 to $10,000, but just because you requested $10,000, you may not get $10,000. You may only get $5,000. I'm just throwing out numbers. So in that contractor agreement, it will indicate that you approve for $5,000 and that the grant is given to you for $5,000. So that's the amount of money that you will have to report for invoice receipts within that 45 to 60 days. Also, you will see that we will tell you what, because if you put in there working capital for $5,000 and you was not approved for working capital for $5,000, maybe it was only approved for $1,000, it will indicate that to you as well. So it will tell you out of those proceeds that you indicated, it will tell you what amount you was approved for under those particular categories that you indicated that you was going to use the funds for. I'm checking again to see if we have any questions. I hope I've been very clear. Next slide, please. Again, if you have some questions once this webinar is over, you can contact Ms. Phyllis Brown, the Deputy Director of the Department of Community and Economic Development. Her email address is seen right there on the screen, pbrown@albanyga.gov, or you can call at 229-302-1235. Or myself, Barbara Francis, Economic Development Program Manager. My email address, again, is right there on the screen, so you may want to write it down if you don't already have it, but it is bfrancis@albanyga.gov. Or you can contact me at 229-302-1237. please, if you have any questions after the webinar, we'd rather you ask the question than you have to be your application to be delayed by us having to send it back to you for those questions. Again, it has been a pleasure. I'm going to check one more time to see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions currently. So again, thank you very much for your time. And it is now 1 o'clock, and we don't want to take up. There was a question that came in, so we'll take that question. Okay, please give the website for the application, but use / and not /. Okay, I'm sorry. The website is www.albanyga.gov / business / small dash business dash relief dash program. And again, it is on the presentation today, on a couple of slides back. This webinar has been recorded, so you can always go back and listen to it. And maybe you can see the website again. You can also go on the City of Albany website. It is there also. What if I applied for more? The amount of funding is $2,500 to $10,000. The maximum that you can receive is $10,000. So even if you indicated that your debts are more and that you applied for, I have seen a couple of applications that's come in that says $10,082, the max that you can receive is $10,000. Thank you for that question. That was a good question. Another question has come in, meaning I asked for above the $10,000 limit. Will this affect my receiving funds? No, it will not affect your receiving funds, but know that once you are approved, it will always only be approved for a maximum of $10,000. So if you've already put in an application and you put in an application for $12,000, know that once we review your application, it will be reduced by $10,000 if all of your categories are approved. There could be some categories that we will not approve because we've seen some application that has come in for $10,000 working capital, and those type of applications will probably be reviewed and contacted. One of the processors will contact you with some questions. We have another question coming in. Do we have to send in invoices on the total amount we ask for? Yes, you have to send in invoices for the total amount asked for, except for if you are purchasing PPE equipment, you may not know the total at this time because they may be adding shipping charges, taxes. However, you can give a ballpark figure. You can indicate that you're going to be using the funds to purchase the PPE equipment, and you don't have a total amount yet. You can give an estimate because I'm sure you've looked on some of the websites to see how much it's going to cost. And then once you purchase the items, then you will send in a receipt for what that total was. So the rest of it could go to your working capital. So let me explain that again. Again, if you are purchasing PPE equipment, you may not have an invoice for that as of this time, but you have an idea of how much that equipment is going to cost you for, maybe, for example, the masks, or the face screens, face shields, or the gloves, or the thermometers, but you have an idea or rough estimate. So you can indicate that where it says all other, be specific. You can indicate that, indicating that you're going to purchase PPE equipment, and the estimate of the cost is going to be $1,000. So once you
receive the funds and you submit your receipts back, we will see the receipt from where you purchased those items, and it cost you $750. So we know that you had a difference left of $250. So that could go towards your working capital. Okay, we had another question, and she said, okay. So I'm sure that means that she understands. Great. And that is all the questions. I don't see any more coming in. Please, again, if I did not answer a question that you might have sent to us during the webinar, please note that you can contact us again at the email address that's now showing on your screen, pbrown@albanyga.gov or barbarafrancis@albanyga.gov. Or again, you can contact us by phone at 229-302-1235 or 229-302-1237. Thank you so much. Without having any additional questions, we're going to close the webinar for today. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to serving you in the future.